Hey you guys, how you all doing? We're going to play a game today. Not a game of chess as such. I'm going to share 4 games with you. I want to have a game of guess the rating. I know that Levy at Gotham Chess has a series on this where he tries to guess the rating of his followers who submit games, right? But this is going to be a bit different. I've played 4 games, right, this afternoon. I'm going to show you all 4 games pretty quickly, and what I would like you to do is literally just, if you can, write down what you think that my opponent's rating is. Okay, and there is a point to this. Now, at the end of each game, I'll tell you what their rating is, and I'll tell you right now, I don't think you're going to get close, or very close, right? But that's okay. But that's kind of the point of what we're going to talk about. Okay, so let's just dive in. Okay, so the first game, I'm black. My opponent plays d4. I play the Dutch. Normal. All pretty normal now. This is very common idea in the Dutch. Is fianchetto bishop for white. So he's playing. This all looks very principled. Okay. I play c6 now. There's 2 points to this move. One is I want to prevent the knight from coming in, and the other is I want to get in the way of this guy. Right. So now knight h3, which looks kind of funky, unfamiliar to me. I castle, he castles, and now I push d6 because I'm thinking, hey, look, one of the main ideas in the Dutch is to get your pawn to e5. And if takes, so I'm thinking I just want to be able to play e5 straight away. All right, takes, and I could push my pawn, that kind of thing. Okay, he preempts that idea by pushing d5 himself. Okay, now I could still play. I could have gone for e5 actually here, and given the option of en passant. That might have worked quite well. I play my bishop to d7. With the idea that if he wants to capture here, I've now got 3 pieces that I could recapture with. We have queen out to here now because my bishop has moved away from the defense of b7. So I push b6. Okay, I'm figuring, look, he's got this light squared pawn structure. All I need to do is push c5, and we've got blocked off pawns, and this bishop is pretty well neutralized. So I get in c5. Now I'm happy. And I allow this idea, right? Because I spot that he can fork my queen and rook and bishop, but I figure I can capture with the bishop. He recaptures, and then, oh no, my rook. Realize that I've done all that work to block off this blooming bishop, right? And then I allow the knight to come in. And, you know, there's only one way that this diagonal can be opened up, and this pawn either has to be captured or it has to capture something else, right? Well, there's 2 ways, and doofus here walks straight into it, so I lose the exchange basically. But on the plus side, I've got a queen on this long diagonal, and white no longer has a light squared bishop, so these squares around the king are going to be vulnerable. And now we have knight d5. We trade knights. I advance my knight. Rook comes across to the d-file. Queen tries to improve. I've got 2 attackers on this pawn. He's now defended it twice. He attacks my knight. Knight has to retreat. Bishop here. Knight comes around again, and now I've got 2 attackers again, but he's only got 1 defender because this one's blocked. Okay, so the bishop moves, looking at my bishop. I figure he might want to trade bishops. He trades bishops. Queen checks, king retreats. Okay, b4. And now I decide I can grab the pawn. Now, this is a mistake. Arguably a blunder, right? It's a mistake according to the engine anyway. Can you see why is it a mistake? Right? It looks pretty straightforward, right? I've got 2 attackers. All right, a knight and a queen. There's only 1 defender, which is the rook. Okay, queen f3, and I've just pinned my knight, right? The key thing is my queen is undefended at the back there, okay? So basically, now if my rook had come across to defend the queen, then we don't have a problem, okay? I could have just moved my knight out of the way. If queen wants to trade off, I've just won myself a pawn back, right? And I've still got all my pawns on the board. And at this point, I actually resign the game because I'm about to lose my knight and I'm already down the exchange. Okay, so that's game number one. Now, can you guess the rating of my opponent? As a clue, we both scored over 95 accuracy in this game. I was actually quite surprised. I thought he'd humiliated me worse than that, but I will tell you, my opponent's rating here was 2306. This is a 2300, maybe the strongest rapid player I've ever taken on. But I was pretty pleased, and interestingly, so I came out like a 95 accuracy out of this game, and that's the key thing. That got me thinking. It's like you have to bring your A game when you're playing stronger players. So now I recognise this pattern. I've figured it out now. I'm going to try and commit it to memory. I'm going to try not to make that same mistake again. And I should always assume that my opponent knows what they're doing. If he seems to allow, oh look, free stuff, right? Well, think twice. Really think it through. So all good stuff. Okay, so 2300, hooray. Next game. Alright, so this is a 10-minute rapid. I have the white pieces. Really nice game, this. It's a Sicilian. And I'm playing the wing gambit at the moment. Makes my opponent think for a little while on this one. And he accepts the pawn. Then a3. This is actually the Engine's recommendation and also Simon Williams' recommendation, I think. And he captures here again. So, very interesting gambit idea here, but ultimately he hasn't won 2 pawns. He wins 1 pawn, but white now. Look at this. This is very much like the kind of Danish gambit where you give away 2 pawns, right? I have a pawn developed already, and I have a knight developed, and I have a rook with options, and I have a bishop with options as well, right? So I'm kind of happy. All right, so e5. And now I decide to go, I've been worshipping at the Temple of Nelson. And so I thought, well, let's do this. Let's go gung-ho, come out with a queen, right? d6 defends this pawn, okay? So he's not falling for that trap. Bishop c4, right? Proper wayward queen style. Channeling my Nelson. Threatening checkmate on f7 and g6. Okay, so in the wayward queen, the move is queen back to f3. Again, just spinning round and renewing your attentions to that. Decent move here, and I thought for a bit on this one. Eventually decided to trade the bishops off. Give him pawn islands, but also it's going to be hard for this king to get castled now, right? So now I pivot round, I see that I do my goldfish, and I see that he has 2 undefended pawns. Okay. Now there's a couple of ways he could defend both pawns. Queen there, okay? And he finds queen d7. So now I develop my knight. He develops his knight. He's attacking this pawn. So I figure that d3 now is a good move because it creates the pawn chain, light squared pawn chain, doesn't get in the way of my bishop. And plus this guy now has ideas maybe of coming out like that. So bishop g7, I'm thinking, is this guy going to try castling? Okay, so I continue my attack with the knight. So the knight now comes in. I've got 2 attackers now against this pawn. Okay, so also notice now that if he castles, this pawn is also pinned, right? So black now advances his king. He gives up any ideas of castling, which is probably correct. I don't know. But he has to defend the pawn. This bishop can't defend the pawn. It's the wrong color bishop. This knight can't defend the pawn because it's on the wrong color square, right? Rook can't, that knight can't. There's nothing that can defend this doubled pawn except his kingliness. Okay, so up comes the boss. And now I'm coming in with my knight. Okay, so my thought is maybe, I mean, I've got ideas. I've got bishop, I can attack this pawn, but also notice that the knight and the pawn are still there, right? This is a problem when you don't develop your knight, is that your rook has no squares to go to, okay? So I'm thinking if I can ever get my knight here, I could win myself a free rook. That would be cool as well. So, but now he brings out his knight, so he spots that threat. Now bishop a3, right? So this is a real front foot game for me, right? I'm really trying to make things difficult for my opponent, okay? This pawn is now pinned. That means that this pawn is no longer defending this pawn, right? So this pawn is now only defended by the knight. Okay, this is how you have to talk to yourself through the game, and I'm talking to myself like a crazy bag lady. Okay, no offense to any crazy bag ladies who may be watching. I love all you guys. Okay, so now the knight comes round, so he's adding another defender to this pawn. In fact, it's really the only way, because I've got I'm attacking twice with the knight and the bishop. The only defenders are the royal couple. Okay, now so if I go in, say with I could go in with the knight. It's probably even worse, right? Go in with the knight, threatening then to move the knight with a discovered check as well. I mean, that'd just be horrible. And he can't capture with the queen or the king. So this is actually the only piece that can defend that pawn. Okay, so now I castle. I want to get my rook onto the f file. It's semi-open. Happy days, right? Semi-open because I went for the bishop trade here, right? And now knight to d4, interesting move. So he's hitting my queen. He's hitting this pawn here. I need to keep defending the pawn. So we trade the knights off. And this, remember, this pawn is still pinned. Okay, he's now down to like under 3.5 minutes, but there is an increment. This is a 10-5 game, right? Okay, so simple chess. Line up lots of attackers against stuff. It's not rocket science. Okay, rook b8 defends. Now I'm maneuver my knight around. So I've got ideas here. Well, first of all, I noticed my knight was undefended there. Okay, and sometimes moving backwards is the way to move forwards. Okay, but I did have some nice ideas. Lots of potential things that I was considering, trying to get my queen into here, for example. But this pawn is a target. So it pushes here, and now I'm thinking, can I get rid of my f pawn somehow? I'd love to get my rook looking down here. Okay, now my opponent's on 217 now. So back comes the knight. Right, I don't want to get out of the way of Freddy. Okay, so here comes Freddy. Run, Freddy, run! Run, Forrest! Okay. Arguably a poorer move here, because I actually break the rook's defense of this pawn. Not that it was going to make a massive difference, because it's actually attacked twice. Okay. And he captures. But, look, I can capture this, because we now have the situation called the overworked defender. This pawn here is the only defender of that, and the only defender of the knight. So I take, if he takes back, we win ourselves a free knight, which is indeed what happens. Now he plays rook f8, but he's down to 28 seconds, right? So he's got now 5 seconds per move. Do we trade rooks? Now, obviously, I want the f-file. Okay, that's an important file. It's the only open file on the board. Okay. This pawn is still pinned, still happy about that. Bishop's still defending this guy. So I decide that rather than, see, if I initiate the exchange here, he recaptures and he's got the file. Now I don't want him to have the file. That's my file, right? So rook f1, now he could trade, which we do, okay? And now he plays rook across there. So his time's creeping up, 29 seconds left now. And I decide to trade off, all right? I notice he does have some looseness, right? He's got 2 undefended pawns here. The bishop's defending that. only the pawn's defending that, queen's defending this stuff, right? That's the goldfish approach, not that. Okay, so he's got a couple of undefended pawns. So I'm thinking that the queen might be able to dance around a bit and at least make him think. Right? Give him pause to, as many moves as I can play that cause him to stop and think for more than 5 seconds. His clock's going down, right? At the same time, I need to watch my rear on this because I don't want to get caught out with. He still does have an increment. This is why increments are so good, really. So now I play bishop e2, 2 attackers on this pawn. I don't think he can defend it a second time, so he just pushes pawn. I grab the pawn, and now we actually material is equal. It's like I've had this guy on the ropes for the whole game, and material's equal. So we have queen there. Queen comes back now, so I'm looking at a check here. Maybe need to make sure that my king is safe. It's all good. My king is adjacent to the open file, so it can defend these squares where the queen could land. He's proposing a trade of queens. I'm not sure about this because he's got this passed pawn here on the a file. Not confident. So I come in with the queen, check, grab the pawn. Right, that's a dangerous pawn, so I want to get rid of that guy. Queen comes down here, attacking the back of my pawn chain. So queen a2 check also comes with the added bonus of it defending the pawn. King moves. King now engages. Right, you have to roll out the king later at this point in the game. And now I decide he's down to 10 seconds. Now I decide I'm happy to trade queens. Right, so I'm attacking the queen, I'm attacking a loose pawn, we trade off queens, okay, and we'll go through the ending. It's actually quite a nice, I was feeling pretty good. I knew I had the time advantage, right? Okay, centralizing the king forward. What's the move? d4 check, right? And what's more, having these side-by-side pawns covers all of these squares, right? So this is all about space. It becomes a spatial exercise. Right? I want to prevent the king from being able to come up the board. I want to force him backwards so that I can get my ideas through. And that's why king f4, right? So he can't push this pawn because I take. And the king still can't advance, right? And I'm thinking if he pushes there, I can just push, right? And you're also using the Zugzwang idea here as well, is that I want to put my opponent in a position where he actually has to move but doesn't want to. So king across and now h4. So now I've stopped this guy in his tracks. So he's running out of moves, right? He's got 1, 2, 3 pawn moves. Otherwise it's the king that has to move. So he pushes b4, right? Now he's down to 2 pawn moves. I push g3. Very casual. King moves. And now again I advance, right? I'm taking advantage of these guys here, right, with this force field that the king cannot penetrate. So I'm coming after this pawn. He's got 5 seconds on the clock, but still fighting. Okay. Now I push d5 because my king's guarding this square. Now this pawn's guarding this square. So again, the king can't make progress. So what's he going to do? Has to slide across. I now push g4. King comes back. I take. So I've won myself a pawn. Okay. King up. King there. And now he's coming after this guy, right? So off goes Harry. Now I remember talking to myself. He's actually up to 24 seconds again now. So he's playing fairly accurately and fairly quickly. I remember saying to myself, I've got to push this, and then he has to come over now to stop Harry from promoting. An easier approach would be king there, and then push. Okay, and he can sweep up these pawns. That's fine. I'm not worried about that. He hasn't got time to capture the pawns, get the king out of the way, and promote. So off goes Harry, and this is important because I needed the king to come another square away, so that I could play that, right. If I didn't, I can't move my king there right now because his king has a force field all around it, right. But with h7, he has to capture. Now I get in there, and now I get this pawn, and now I get a queen. And that's it. We actually finish. He's got 40 seconds on the clock, and he resigns in the end. So, what was your guess? What's your guess at my opponent's rating? I think he fought very, very well. I think he was in trouble for a lot of the game, but really, he was a real warrior. And actually, towards the game, it's one of those games that can really turn around and bite you in the ass because, when you feel like you've had your opponent in that much trouble, but you've not really landed any serious punches, it's very easy to get cocky and especially when there's an increment and ending up losing the game. So, very, very good game, I thought, particularly when you consider my opponent's rating is 978. I mean, this dude played like a 1300. I'm sure, It wasn't so accurate at the start, but by jingo, he dug deep and found the right moves in many cases in that. So 978, good game. Okay, now so let's move on. Here's another. All right, now this is actually a shorter game. E4, and I decide I'm not going to play the Vienna. Okay, and we have an Italian. Okay, let's go with the Italian, huh? So 2 knights defense. I now go in with the knight attack. Okay, potentially a fried liver. Right, now, there's only a few ways to deal with this. D5 is one of them. I capture with the pawn. I don't know if that's the right move. And this is now the Polero defense. Okay, so we have knight A5 attacking the bishop. I retreat the bishop here. I figure if he wants to take, I recapture with the A pawn, free up the rookie rook, and we might be all right. So he does. Queen now captures the loose pawn. Right, so material is actually equal here. Apart from my opponent has this. Well, so what are the imbalances? Well, I'm ready to castle. He's got a queen out on the board. So I castle. He attacks my knight, and I attack the queen. So this is a pawn structure that I'm quite familiar with because I get it a lot in the Vienna. All right. So I want to get my pawn up here, get my knight behind the pawn, controlling the center. That looks kind of all right. So I attack the queen. Queen comes in. Knight retreats. And now queen takes pawn, and queen takes queen, and black resigns. Okay, now that was a very, very different game to the last game. Interesting, I think what was interesting about it is him, knowing this response, but obviously, he must, if he plays e5 against e4, he must find himself in this situation quite frequently. So he knows this and then finds this move. Interesting little move. I haven't analysed this game, so I don't know how well I dealt with it. But and then clearly just simply makes a blunder, right? Later on, and he did take 34 seconds. He didn't lash that move out. Okay, so to me, this guy played way worse than the previous guy. So what is your guess? Well, the answer is the guy's actually rated 1214. So he's a 1200 player. But I thought the guy in the previous game played stronger. Okay, so you're starting to get the picture here. Okay, let's do one more. Okay, and here I've got the black pieces. We have e4, e6. I'm playing the French against the Frenchman. And now e5. This is apparently called the Steinitz attack. So, he's broken... This is unprincipled, let's put it that way, right? To move a pawn that you've already pushed a second time, but in doing this, he's grabbing space. Okay, so I play d5 anyway. If he captures en passant, then we've got c takes d6, and I've got a happy center. Okay, we have d4 and c5. So we are now in the French advance position. Okay, but normally, this is pushed after d5. Okay, but it's just a different move order. Okay, now we have c3. This is very, very common at the lower levels. It's not so common, I don't think, at the higher levels. You normally get knight. I think knight d2 is one of the most common, but there are lots and lots of variations in the French I'm discovering. Okay, knight c6, now putting attacker number 2 on that pawn, and it's defended twice. Bishop out, pinning the knight, bishop breaks the pin, knight d3. Now, at this point, you always have to be aware, if you're playing the French, that the queen defending d4 is very often quite key. So actually, at this point, pawn takes d4, pawn takes d4, knight takes d4, I simply win a pawn. Okay. You do also have to be careful that if you ever bring your queen out to b6, which is a very, very typical move, right? If the queen ever captures on here, you've got to be careful that there isn't a bishop, right, that can come here with check and a discovered attack on the queen to win the queen, right? So just, if you're a French player, bear that in mind. Okay, so first I kick the bishop anyway, bishop retreats, and I thought about c4 here, but it's kind of boring, to lock up the entire board like that. So, but anyway, I spot that d4 is only defended the once. I capture. Now, instead of recapturing with the pawn, which would result in knight there, he moves his knight to attack the pawn. But that allows me to capture again. And now pawn takes, and now knight takes e5. Okay, so I'm actually up 2 pawns at this point in time. Knight comes in, but that was a blunder. He just hung the knight. All right, so kind of similar to the last game. Knight f3. I grab the bishop off. I figure I've got the bishop pair. I'm up in material. Let's go. Right. I'm happy for the queen to be there. There's no major threat. And now this is a nice move. Bishop b5 hits the queen, but key also, if the queen moves, f1 is now locked down, and the king can't castle behind his pawns. Queen moves. Okay, so I'm happy. Now develop my knights. Time to get castle myself. I've got option here. Do I want to trade off his knight? I figure, yeah, let's trade off the knight. Open things up. He's got an isolated pawn in the middle of the board now. I'm up a whole knight. My knight's got very good prospects. And I've got this evil bishop here guarding the f1 square and stopping him from castling his king to safety. So I castle. Haha. You can't castle. You can't castle. You can't castle anymore. You can't castle anymore. Right, so rook e8. Get the rook out of trouble. Rook c8 now. This obviously takes some calculation. You have to figure this stuff out. And he decides to go for it. And we swap off 2 rooks and 2 queens. Now, if you're white in this situation, looking at this board, you have to spot a threat-a-roo. Okay, king still can't castle. King can't go there or there. All right, now, this is another mistake, I think, because I can now play b6. And he goes, oh, lucky me, free stuff. Thank you very much indeed for the free pawn, sir. Right, but no, because rook c1. Okay, this is one of the most common skewers you will ever get. Right, this happens all the time, or the risk of it happens an awful lot. Okay, king can't castle. He's actually only got 1 legal move. Go there. I get the rook. White resigns. All right. So, what have you written down? What do you think? We've seen some blunders. We've seen some tactical errors. Okay, how strong is this guy? Well, the answer is he's kind of in the middle of the others. This guy's rated 1189. And, interesting. So, the point is, what have we learned from all of this? We've seen a 2300, we've seen a sub 1000 who played strong. We've seen a 1200 blunder his queen. We've seen an 1100 blunder material, okay, and fall for a pretty obvious tactic, okay. What do we learn from this? I think that some people respond to playing against a stronger player positively. I think other people respond negatively and are more inclined to panic. When I played the 2300 guy, I think I upped my game to a degree, but I don't think I played my absolute best, but hey, you know. And then of course, you know, I did bottle it when I saw I was going to lose that piece, lose the knight. I just went, look, he's going to wipe the floor with me. Now, if you go into a game in the certain knowledge that you cannot win, you're right, right? I think, is it Henry Ford, that said, if you believe you can, or if you believe you can't, you're right, right? So the belief, you have to go into a game thinking, I can win this. And something I'm trying to do a lot at the moment is to treat every single opponent exactly the same, right? They deserve my respect. Anyone can pull a surprise checkmate out of the bag from nowhere if you let your guard down, right? So don't do that, okay? But I think, again, we've said this so many times on this channel, playing against stronger opponents is going to improve your chess. I think that second game with the 900 guy, the lowest rated guy I've played today, was arguably the best game of chess, right? The dude was a fighter, he's a warrior, right? And he'll have come out of that, although he eventually lost, he'll come out of that with a lot more self-belief and resources than maybe some of the other guys. And then these guys who go blundering material, even though they're 200, 300 points higher rated than that guy, than game two, have they benefited much from this? I don't know. So, yeah, I do believe that playing against stronger opponents is the way to go, for sure. I need to do it more. And the bottom line, I think, guys, is really that we need to be training at the level of chess that you want to be playing, right? It sounds very, very simple, and it is. That if you want to be playing, let's say you're sub 1000, if you want to play 1000 plus chess, pick fights with 1000 plus opponents and keep picking fights. Because the great thing is that if you lose, you don't lose as many points. But if you win, you get more points. Hooray! Okay. I play a lot against lower rated opponents for the purposes of this channel, and sometimes it backfires and I lose like 14, 15, 16 rating points in one game. It can happen. It does happen. It happens far too much. Also, remember, stronger players can always foul up, right? I've had it. I have beaten the 2000 before in rapid chess, right? Because they look at my rating and they think, oh, you know, I deserve this. I'm going to walk this. I could do this blindfold, right? And then they lose, and then they lose 16 rating points, or whatever, right? So my advice is twofold. I think if you can, play stronger opponents, play at the level that you want to be playing at, okay? And also, if you can, ignore the rating. Treat everyone the same. Try to bring your A game to every single game, right? I mean, why wouldn't we want to do that anyway? So that's it for this one. I hope you've had fun trying to guess the ratings. I bet you are miles out because you know. And that's another thing, right? That is probably the big nugget to take away from these examples is it's very hard to tell, you know. Sub 1000s can play a good game. 1300s, 1200s can suck. We all suck sometimes. We all mess up. It's too easy to get casual. It's too easy to get cocky if you're playing somebody lower rated. So the key is take advantage of that fact. Pick on some giants, you know. You may win, you may get your ass kicked a lot, but it doesn't matter because you will get stronger and it will get tougher. Right. So there you go. The Ben's Guide to Tougher Ass Chess. Okay. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great weekend. I'll see you soon.